Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
Good Saturday afternoon out there, everyone, and we want to welcome you to a Thanksgiving weekend edition of Muskogee Vision. I'm your host, Jason Salzman, and we want to welcome you in. We want to thank you all for sharing your holiday weekend with us, and we've got a special treat for you. I hope you've had just a great time with family and friends traveling, and that your travels have been safe. A lot of people out there, you know, it's such a big holiday for Native American families, Thanksgiving. So we're going to take our first break. When you come back, it's From the Vault, 1980s, In Praise of Our Fathers. You can only find it right here on Muskogee Vision.
As part of our grand reopening, we're partnering with Muskogee Media.
We're just getting ready to do another one of our $100 shopping spree giveaways, and I wanted to give a big thank you to the Muskogee Media for sponsoring this event.
Like Randy's Foods and Muskogee Media on Facebook and share this video for the drawing.
Until Europeans landed on the shores of North America, the native peoples here had no written laws, no books of scripture, and little need of either. With an innate sense of spirituality, they had a natural ability to commune with the Creator and His creation. They lived in harmonious relationship with the natural world. To them, this world was infused with spirit. Like the wind, they moved as a spirit moved them. Many of the ceremonial songs and dances held by Indian people were expressions of praise and gratitude to God, the Father of all. And so it was for the Muskogee Creek Indians. When Christianity was introduced here, many Creek people accepted it readily and wholeheartedly, for it reflected the best of the spiritual teachings of their own fathers. Others held firmly to the ways of their ancestors, rejecting the ways of the white men because they had no concept of the purity of earth and sky. But the seeds of Christ's teachings were planted and took root among open and receptive people. And what came forth was a unique blend of European Christianity and Native American spirituality. Today, many Creek people still participate in traditional religious activities held at their ceremonial grounds. Many more, however, attend worship services at one of the 70 small Indian churches in the Creek Nation. Their patterns of praise, worship, and fellowship still reflect the ancient roots of the Muskogee Way. Let us learn more of these ways as we examine the praise of our fathers, spiritual traditions of the Muskogee Creek people. Most Creek churches have names like Yardika, Casita, Tallahassee, Wheelgufki, and Thopsaco. names once associated only with traditional Creek ceremonial grounds. For the most part, these churches are located in remote, rural areas, not more than a stone's throw away from the ceremonial ground site that once bore those names. But when Creek people began to be converted to Christianity and ceased to practice the ways of their forefathers, they took with them more than the old names. Many of the old ways came with them too. Today, there are only a dozen or so active Creek ceremonial grounds in eastern Oklahoma. These are all that remain of the once mighty network of tribal towns that made up the Creek Confederacy in ancient times. During the spring and summer months, traditional ceremonies are still held here. The Green Corn Celebration, known to the Creek people for nearly 2,000 years, is the highlight of the ceremonial season. It is a time for renewal and rededication, a time for thanksgiving and preparation for a new year. Fasting is an essential part of the ceremony, and prayers are offered to Ibofunga, one of the Creek names for God, which literally means overseer. During the green corn days, old wounds are healed and past mistakes are forgiven. A fire burns at the center of these ceremonial sites, fed by 4 logs pointing in the 4 directions. 4 brush arbors containing bent seats form a square around the fire. The main arbor faces east, toward the rising sun. This is where the Miko, the spiritual leader of the community, is seated, along with his council. 2 of his assistants, called deacons, carry out the Miko's instructions and make sure that everyone takes his or her proper place. Around the outer perimeter of the grounds are permanent campsites, maintained by the families who are regular members of each ground. During his long lifetime, George Koser Sr., now deceased, participated in ceremonial ground activities and also pastored a church for 13 years. In an interview taped in 1983, he shared some of his own experiences in the 2 traditions.
Well, this ceremonial ground, my thinking is that was our old tradition that come from Alabama, and that's all we didn't know. That was a church. That was telling to me through my elder people, my kinfolk, or my mother and her mother, all those that tell me that that was their religious. And I do believe a whole lot about this ceremonial, because I says, I'm Christian, but I don't fast. I just sitting up there and probably fast an hour and a half, 2 hours. I thought I fast. But where ceremonial ground, they fast all day long. And they got more power than I have. I want my children to understand all about our Indian heritage and Indian Creek life. That's why every once in a while these boys of mine want to go to Stomp Dance. I'll pick them up and take them down there, and I'll sit around in the car until it's over with.
All the churches, all the Creek churches face east, and that was kind of like the beginning. It's always the beginning, the sunrise, the beginning of life. And so that was why the churches are facing east, and that's my understanding toward it. And it always something typifies in 4s. Usually it's like the 4 directions, or maybe the 4 spirits, or something to that effect. But over the period of time when there were some good things that came from the Creek, and they tried to put it together with Christianity. And so a lot of things are done in fours. And my understanding was that the fourth Sunday, what we call the fourth Sunday now, started back there when there was like one missionary, one person. He went into each community. And so he would start at this one community and one Sunday, and he would take his group and go to the next community the next Sunday, and it would rotate around to every fourth Sunday. So he'd be back at the start of the month at his church where he first started.
And that early days church, people used to come to church in the wagon. If you all know what wagon is. Gene, you know what wagon is? It's something got wheels on it, if you know what wheels are. And it's drawn by horses. You know what horses is? They're riding horses now. They used to hook them to the wagon. And when they go to church, they had hay and corn in the wagon. And people get in there, and dogs would take a lead. Dogs know how to go to church better than the people did. They used to take a lead to the church. And the people that live close to the church house, when they hear the bell ring, the dogs get up to the church house. They say the dog don't know anything, but they know more about when they go to church than some people. Now, when those people that rode in the wagon, we come 10 miles to go to church. That black cloud, we didn't have no weather report then. We went anyway. And when it come a rain, we'd stop in some houses. Then after the rain, we'd go on. And when we got there, they had to cut wood because it's too far to go and get it ready before time. And the houses, you could look through the floor. The walls, you could look through. It was poor houses. They had to build a fire by wood stove, kerosene lamp. Finally, but just about dark, they'd have everything ready.
And there were camp houses around the Indian churches. If you go around the Creek churches today, you'll still see these. There may be up to 10 or 11 camp houses in a circle around the church where families either live on the campus or come for the church on fourth Sunday and camp, like they did at the ceremonial grounds. So they came far and near, and they started from Wednesday. They met Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And they would spend that whole week there as they came in wagons and horseback.
Friday night they'd have preaching. Then Saturday, maybe if they had to get groceries, maybe they'd go out about half a day to town or something, like that. And Saturday early, about 4 o'clock, they'd come in, be right on church premises. And Saturday night, they'd have what they call a testimony service, each one individually. And then if it was a fourth Sunday, we call it Fourth Sunday, why they'd have their service on Sunday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, all day, and then Sunday night. And on Saturday night, they'd ask the church, the members, if there's anything against one another, some disagreement, maybe some kind of a dispute or something that they had. If they did, but before they can, the scripture, that's what it says, you bring your gift to the altar. If you remember that you have something against your brother, leave it there and go and reconcile with him, then come back and offer it. So that's the way they'd do. the people would, see them 2 or 3 go out. They'd shake hands. Some would be crying when they come in. But anyway, that's the way they did, because they're getting ready for take of the communion, the bread, And they didn't want to see anybody have anything against one another. And then after that, after the communion, then they'd shake hands before they dismiss. I've seen a lot of them, they just shed tears and hug one another, And I thought that was wonderful, but today it's kind of different. It's getting a little different, yeah.
Our church is kind of like we've kind of become more, maybe what you might want to call, say, assimilated in a sense, and we still have some traditional creek singing and things like that. We still keep with the traditional fourth Sunday, except not in the same way as they did, but we just meet on Saturday night and Sunday. We have church all day long. We start church around 10 o'clock, and we have visiting preachers that come in, and all the visiting preachers, they get to speak during the day. The creek singing goes on throughout the day, and so then there's lunch, and then there's some more creek preaching, there's some breaks, and then there's supper, and then if there's more preachers there's preaching during the night. And our churches have been known to go to about 1 o'clock Monday morning sometimes, so it depends on how the people want it and what they really want to get out of their 4 Sundays. There's a little history behind the creek singing. The words are just been naturally given by some of the people who have been talented to have the lyrics in the songs, and the tunes. You just have to memorize it. You can't pick it up or any other way. It just something, when you memorize it just stays with you. You begin to realize what the words mean, and you understand where the song has come from. And if you talk to an older, say, creek that knows these songs, that have known the development of these songs, they really relate to like the Trail of Tears, some hard times that they've gone through.
We must remember that it was the faith of our fathers. Even the song, we sing those in songs today in our Methodist hymnals. There's a song where we sang the faith of our fathers. We sing it, but we don't really know what that implies to us as Native people, because they're a faith of my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, and of many of us who a faith in a religion, through a religion that sustained them, that carried them, that made them aware of the presence of the Supreme Being, that was around them, they lived daily. And the Native American religion of the Muskogee people, this was something that was intact. They embraced, because it carried the people before them, their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents before them. And when Christianity moved into our area, our community, our world, there was some division. And again, my feeling is, and I'm sure that there would be a lot of clergy in the United Methodist Church, particularly in the Oklahoma Missionary Conference, would disagree, but we've been victimized in some ways. It's a way of one of genocide, where our religion was there intact, the religion of our forefathers, but somehow the 19th century approach of missionaries came and conditioned us to think that the traditional ways were heathen, were taboo, were something that would take us all to hell. And it frightened our people so much that they began to think that all was wrong, and we were all in sin all this time, and out of fear and out of not disturbing the waters or hurting those who came with good intent and saying, take up the cross, and we followed the way of Christianity.
There are things good in every culture and things evil. Those things evil had to be weeded out. But they too threw out everything as being evil because they didn't understand it according to their way of thinking. And so that progress got stronger and stronger and stronger. And we find when it comes to these shores, well, we were nothing more than the heathens and the pagans. And they did not want to take the time to understand this, although there were very few that did. And we find the writings today, and I praise God for that. But we were termed as the heathens of the Bible lands. We were not the heathens of the Bible land. The heathens of the Bible land sacrificed their children and buried them in the walls of their dwellings. You find no Indians that do this for good fortune from year to year, especially among the southeasterns where the good fortune came us paying homage, and much like the laws of Moses, yearly, a year renewal, forgiveness, from one year to the other. It's much like the laws of Moses and how God, through the law, directed Moses to begin to have the people perform. And so the southeastern cultures begin to perform in that manner also, and I think in much of the other Indians across the land did some of the very same things. So I don't think that we can have any problem with anymore if we sit down and just thought about it, that to receive truth that we were a spiritual people and that we were not pagan.
The scripture tells you to forsake all for God, and so there's been maybe some confusion there, and instead of saying becoming Christ-like, you know, some people think that to become a Christian is become white-like.
And this scripture came up on me. Psalms 133 says, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." I always say that there'll never be, as long as we don't have an understanding, we're going to have a problem. That's right. Amen. Amen.
Our purpose is to create a reconciliation and to reclaim some esteem that is spiritually based, and promote some reconciliation between Christians. I'm not talking about your traditional Christian idea, which is missionary, that set at odds our people. But to get the essence idea of real Christianity without all the man's ideas and doctrines, and go and promote reconciliation to our ceremonial people and say, hey, you haven't missed it, it's just that you haven't been taught. We're called Ahisagada Ido, which translated from Creek means tree of life. And we're a fellowship. And the reason why we come up with this name is because it's an ancient name, not really coming from the Creek aspect, but tracing back that name, I feel like it has a lot to do with Creek history, in that particular aspect is probably forgotten by our present ceremonial people. But in my researching and praying about God, what do you have for Indian people, I come upon a teacher that came to the Mid-Americas, centuries ago, and his name was Quetzalcoatl, and his teachings, he taught about the tree of life. And that teaching came up through the Mississippi Basin and from the West. By using this and being a Christian group also, Indian Christian group, we wanted to keep something that was very ethnic to us. And so this is what we come up with, Plus, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible in the book of Genesis. It's in the Bible all through some of the major prophets. And then in the last book, it's there. And so this tree of life is nothing more than the anointed of God. And we know him today by his name, Jesus Christ, the first and the last. And this is what we want to do, is promote some reconciliation between the two things, so that once we can become one again.
We've always maintained that we're from the earth. We've maintained that idea as far as our bodies will go back to the earth. God has made us out of the earth, and we'll go back there someday, but our spirits will go with him. And so this type of spiritualism has really developed into a really sensitive internal spiritual awareness in the Indian people, and knowing that there's something just more than just materialistic everyday living, but there's spirituality to it. They tried in those early days, and as you know, even today we still have Indian churches, Indian ways, Indian things, and that they have not been successful to educate as far as the white man's way and all those things to make an Indian a white man.
And that'll wrap it up for this week's Thanksgiving edition of Muskogee Vision. And we want to thank you for bearing with us. You know, a holiday week's a little different around here, and we want to just be able to still put out our show, but also we're working with time constraints, things like that. So it's nice to be able to show some of the archive footage, some of the things that have been done before Jared Moore, Jason Salzman came around this place. So it's a nod to the people that came before us, but also our history as well. Everybody out there, have a great holiday weekend and have a great month of November as we close it out. We'll see you next time.